So today we have on compound interest, Dr. Katherine Gardhouse. And I have to say, can I call you Katherine, or do you want to do a doctor?
No, Katherine's good, thank you.
Katherine, listen, I've read up about your background, and I don't want to diminish, and you're super accomplished. I do want to start to talk a little bit about why we have you here too, is that part of our job, realtors and broker owners are pseudo psychologists. Mm-hmm. So I think we can tap into that, maybe turn this into a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, how to, but yes. A masterclass and some of the things that we're dealing with, yes, and clients and things like that. But first, I want to talk about you and your history, and the integrating mind and body seems very natural when we're talking about mental health, but you really kind of uncovered it a little deeper. And what made you decide to put the two together?
Yeah, I think it's well known in the scientific literature at this point. For a lot of years we tried to separate mind and body, mm-hmm, and that is just so clearly not how we exist as humans or animals in general. And it's so obvious, I think, to pull it all together when we think about how does a person thrive and what is human flourishing, that of course we need to be working on our physical, our biological, our emotional, nutritional, social health all in one package, because they're all part of the same system. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, at this stage, the healthcare model has really separated them when it comes to something like mental health in particular. And mental health isn't a single biological issue. It is a complex, integrated, holistic problem, both in ourselves and our environment. And if we don't treat it in that way, we're missing a lot of the important pieces that will create well-being in a person. And so I wanted to build a model that really respected that integrated, interconnected experience of being a living human person, without trying to treat these different pieces separately. And so we have built a program. It's completely integrated. You do all of the different components together, and the change that we see because of that is just incredible. It speaks volumes, and the work happens so naturally when you are creating a space that provides the conditions that allow healing to happen. Healing occurs. And so instead of trying to think about mental health in a medical model where people are coming for individual appointments, mm-hmm, it's like, let's create a system that actually cultivates well-being for people. And so that's what we wanted to create.
So the physicality of the treatment, let's say, okay, mm-hmm, if I can say that, is it 50%, 30%, 20%, or is it completely integrated into everything?
Yeah, so it's trying to think about, for all of our members, we want to think about what are the core components that lead to any kind of suffering. Mm-hmm. And when we think about that, we're going to be thinking about things at the metabolic, energetic level, and that is going to pull in some of the pieces that we're doing through physical movement, through embodiment and being more mindfully connected to our bodies and our nervous systems, using nutrition as a way, not just because we're trying to get some superficial ideal or optimize, health in one direction, but regulation of our body and full nourishment of our body is going to signal safety to our body and allow us to have the most energy and thrive in our lives. And then on top of that, there's emotional pieces. And this is something that you'll come in contact with all the time in having a service industry, that we want to work at the deepest level from a psychological standpoint, which is emotional. And all of those things interact. So there's the physicality, right? Mm-hmm. When we're in emotional distress, moving our bodies can be really helpful. Sometimes rest is helpful. Sometimes action is helpful. And so when it comes to the business, the way it works, it's a membership, and the members come and utilize all aspects of the program on a daily kind of basis. They're doing different components.
It's like a subscription model in a sense, right? And that's pretty new to the industry, would you say? Or
First of its kind.
Wow, you're a trailblazer. That's why we're so interested in what you're doing. That's awesome. Yeah. Tell me, was it a patient or a patient group, or was it research? What brought you to this revelation of doing this and doing more of a deeper dive into it?
It feels like, in a way, it was like my whole life kind of led to this place, in a sense. And I really came to me in 2012, so quite a long time ago, when I was in deep, research in terms of the health space, and I was really trying to decide for myself. I spent time thinking about, how do I align myself with something that I feel is meaning driven, is going to reduce suffering in in some space, like I really feel compelled to reduce suffering. And I just couldn't see the value in the system that existed. It felt too stagnant. It felt like it was not enough. And I saw how seeing, clients, for example, 1 time a week, which is the standard model, you go for therapy 1 time a week, it just felt like a drop in the bucket or a drop in the ocean when you were working with clients that have such complex life problems.
Yes.
And so I thought we have to do better than this. This is not enough. And in doing a lot of this deep health research, and I'm both a clinical and a health psychologist, so spent a lot of time in this area, it kind of just solidified for me. At one point, it was like, the whole concept just came to me, and it felt like an aha moment. Like, of course, this is what needs to happen. And at that point, I hadn't gone back to graduate school, and I redecided what I was going to do with my life, and then went down that path, and that's why it took me a little while to get to this point to be able to actually create the thing. But designed, my education to be able to tailor everything that I was doing to optimize the system that we're building by doing deep health research, deep psychological research, working in the most complex trauma areas in order to be able to work with people with all presentations. And because I say trauma, and I use that term, kind of loosely, it's like the way in which life negatively impacts you and shapes you.
Yes.
And if I can work with people when we're working from that framework, I think that applies broadly to the human experience. So it was a long journey and a convoluted pathway, but it felt like an obvious answer to a system that kind of feels fragmented at the moment.
Oh, I think you're totally onto something, and I think bringing all those two worlds together is so critical. And it's funny because it's funny when people like trailblazers like yourself, right? You think about it, and you're like, this is so obvious, but you took it and you cultivated and again, that research, it's amazing, and you should be congratulated. And it's a jewel in Hamilton, so we're really proud to have you here in Hamilton.
Took over the old Hells Angels building.
Oh, there you go. See, there you go. Wow, there you go. So you got a little history there. Oh
yeah.
If those walls could talk, right?
Those walls could talk. When I went and looked at the building, you'll appreciate it from a real estate perspective. But I was in there looking at it. I'm like, can I put a mental health center in a place that has a barbed wire fence? So I was like, let's go.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's always, we're putting a new twist on an old theme, because it was, a place where a bunch of traumatized men came to look for belonging and in all the kind of wrong ways. And we're just trying to do it with a positive.
Oh, I think that's amazing. That's cool. So let's kind of switch gears and let's turn to the masterclass of this. So there's I don't even know if there's studies on this, but moving, selling your house, and all that kind of stuff is very traumatic, right? Like, it's a traumatic thing. And in real estate, we have these multiple Ds. Like, there's some people call the 5 or 6 Ds, which divorce is one of them. Downsizing. Debt is a huge one that we're seeing, consolidation and people underwater. We've got death, unfortunately. That's part of it. As I like to call one is I do, getting married, and then delivery is having a baby. So there's a lot to unbundle here, right? So, right now, I think we're seeing again, financial stress leads to divorce. And, if you had to give advice to real estate practitioners and how to approach this, and now we're talking, we're dealing with two people, two where they had needs that came together. Now these needs are kind of apart, but yet there's some kids involved. From the real estate perspective and from how to deal with that first, have any advice to deal on the divorce side of things in terms of the divorce? It's two traumas: divorce and selling a house, and that kind of thing.
Like breaking up your whole life, right?
Completely.
There's such
and we're only there for 6 to 8 weeks. So again, we're just trying to figure out how do we, what would be the advice? How do we perform under those circumstances, and how do we make sure that we're accomplishing everyone's needs?
And here's maybe a question before I go into
sure.
advice.
Yeah.
Is what is it that you're commonly hearing from people, seeing from people in those moments? Like, they're coming to you, is it a state of overwhelm? They're kind of falling apart because of the grief that they're going through, or what is it that your realtors are encountering?
Well, they're encountering deep resentment and I think what's happening is people are making decisions.
Yes.
maybe to pull back, don't do showings. Maybe one of the people lives in the house and the other person is not in the house. They're not being cooperative. It's that kind of thing. Like, how do I stall this? Because look, I can only imagine that everything is coming undone, and your home is your homestead. It's your security blanket. Now all that's being taken away, and it's digging in their heels. Like, a lot of times people dig in their heels. One party digs in their heels in terms of moving on. Yeah. Right. So how do you get everybody on the same page and understanding this is a transaction rather than an emotional state of being? But maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, right? It's a hard problem is the truth, because of course in these kind of moments, I think people there's a strong tendency to respond in a way that is that protective anger sometimes from one party. Sometimes when people separate, there can be an amicable separation and really work through the pain and the problems in a very mature way. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the average, where you get people who are feeling tremendous hurt and they don't want this reality to be their reality. They're confronting an enormous loss. This can be one of the most painful moments in people's lives. I think that separation for couples, especially when there are children involved, are one of the hardest things that adults have to go through, because there's nothing more heartbreaking. Like, nobody goes into a relationship and into a family life thinking we're going to break everything up at some point. And so to be confronting that and the pain for the children, the pain for themselves. And so people get into these defensive anger places. I don't want to be in contact with the loss. I don't want to feel the grief. And so instead, I'm going to stall the process. I'm going to dig my feet in. I'm going to not talk to my partner. I'm going to make everything more and more difficult because I can't come into contact with my own pain.
Yes.
And the hard part with that is that what's really required is for the person who is in pain and is in this, what we kind of call an externalizing anger. They're putting up a defense and a front, and they're digging in their heels and making things difficult. Is usually what's happening psychologically is that person isn't necessarily able to hold space for their grief and allow themselves to feel the pain of that loss fully. It feels vulnerable often to do that, to allow themselves to really accept the loss. But if we can, from a place of maturity, recognize that this is over, there's nothing that I can do that can stop this from happening, and then come into a place of some rational thinking from that. But as a realtor, like, how do you help somebody be able to do that? And it might be having a little bit of a frank conversation in those moments, because from a psychological perspective, as a psychologist, I would work at helping to work through the anger and then help them shift into the grief and try to stay in that place. Because if we can stay in the place of grief, we can let go. And grief is going to come in waves. It's going to come over and over and over again. But if we can shift into that place, defensive anger comes down, and usually we can come back into a rational executive functioning, right? Our limbic system turns off, our frontal cortex turns on, and I can start to think more logically and actually let go of the idea, right, of what it is that I'm holding on to, which is the life that I had imagined for myself. And so I don't know, in terms of, from a realtor's perspective, if you're able to have that frank conversation with somebody who's got their heels dug in and be like, look, buddy, like, it's over and you got to accept the loss. Can we make this as simple as possible and move forward? And like, try to help them connect to, this is a loss, right?
So how do you, so what's the, and I don't want to use the breakthrough moment, but what is this, what's an initial sign that they're in the grief? What would be a sign that you would recognize that we're on the path to being in the grief mode? And then you're saying you got to stay in grief and not go back.
Not like, go back to anger.
Yeah, not go back to anger. So what are some of the subtleties that you can recognize in a person that they're finally in the grief mode?
There would usually be a softening,
Okay.
It's like, instead of that hard, I've got my feet dug in.
There's a little give. They're starting to give a little bit.
There's a little give, like there's a release of tension. They're like, there's a drop. It's not a pleasant place to be in grief either.
No.
But being in controlling, kind of rageful states is also very uncomfortable for people. It's just hard because I think being in that protective anger place is is exactly that. They feel protected. And so to take that away from them feels exposing.
Yes.
So I think it's like whenever you're coming at somebody who is feeling a lot and is behaving in a way that is, the expression of that anger, et cetera, validating, right, what they're feeling. Like, I know, I know this sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is hard. This is not what you wanted. Trying to validate by like seeing the anger, but then validating the grief underneath a little bit. Like it's like, I know how hard this is to be going through this. And like, I know this is not what you imagined for your life. I know this is not what you imagined for your future. And we got to work through this somehow.
And the other thing is too, you have to balance that with the other person and almost have to celebrate some of these small wins that, you know what, hey, we did get the showing today. It's starting to come, because again, you for sake of a better word, you got to keep the other side motivated and upbeat and not putting that additional pressure.
Yes.
Correct? So it's a bit of a balancing act.
It's such a balancing act. And I think it's, it's such a hard thing, because I think on the other side, it's like you don't want to make concession after concession after concession where you're losing things that just don't make sense. But in a way, sometimes somebody's maybe unhealthy anger is pushing that, right? Where you do have to make concessions because you just want to move this thing forward. And it's such a tragic experience. And, I know the legal system supports to a degree, but not always enough.
Yeah.
And it's the trying to put human emotions into systems, which is a really hard thing to do, and somehow you have to move forward nonetheless. So it is, and I think sometimes the expectation of somebody being able to come out of their anger is also not going to happen. There are some people who are just so dug in, and that honestly probably comes from a whole history in their life, right? Like how they've developed emotionally that we can't necessarily change. So it is trying to work with both parties to come at least as much as possible into a rational discussion to move things forward.
Absolutely. That's cool. So maybe you bring the two people to a F45 and get them all, get their anger out on the exercise.
Please,
Hey, before we do the listing, let's go to an F45 for a half an hour.
Catch them at a good moment.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the I do, another D, but it's a very positive I do, but there are some challenges with I do. You're bringing two people coming together. Maybe they've never lived together. They're looking for a house. They're
high expectations.
Exactly. How do you kind of temper that and two different mindsets and what they're maybe they don't have aligned goals in terms of where they want to live or how they want to live and things like that. So any advice in terms of that?
Yeah, it's quite hard. You're like dealing with people in these high emotional situations, and like high emotions are so hard to deal with because it's they take us into a place where we're not able to think rationally, and there's a lot on the line, right? These are big decisions for people. Their whole life is in front of them. So yeah, in those cases, I know this is going to sound like so simple in a way, but as much as possible when we're dealing with people in emotional states, we always want to move into validating what they're feeling. Validate the feeling. And it's like the feeling is what we're validating, not necessarily what they're looking for or the action or anything around it, but the feeling, right? It's like, I know that it seems like it's so important to you that you're thinking about this home as your forever home or imagining your kids in this place. And it might not end up being that for you. Like this might be a starter home and you might build up to something in the future, but it's like validating that, like the excitement that they are holding, the desire that they're holding, because when we can validate, people calm. And if you see somebody's pain or somebody's excitement or the pressure they're feeling, and they see that you see that, it calms a person. Yeah. And so if you can look for that always when there's, some like tension in between a couple and they're trying to sort through, but they both got a lot, big opinions or they're imagining, it's like connecting to that feeling. Like I can tell you're imagining this future that you want. And like, you can kind of paint that picture for them in a way. When somebody feels that, it just creates this like release. Like you get it. You see me. I feel understood. Yeah. And when we can calm, then we can also kind of concede in ways too.
I gotcha. Yeah. It just brings to the whole buyer remorse thing. Yeah, and that goes across everyone, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right?
Trauma of buying a house.
Buying a house. Yeah, and how do you work through that? And some of the things you're talking about are very interesting. Yeah, maybe you came on this journey and you felt this was going to be your forever home, and you're thinking it might not be your forever home, but that's okay in a sense. So walk me through some of that dialogue. What do you think? What do you think they're feeling in that remorse thing? Is it a sense of loss that what they had in their mind? Like what are they feeling at that moment?
I mean, I assume that there's maybe like two types.
I wish I had you on speed dial all the fucking time. Can you imagine? Hey, wait a minute. Let's do a three-way conversation with my agent, the client, and you.
the cat signal is sending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So I feel like there's probably two types of remorse. I think there's probably maybe less intense kind of remorse that is just the purchase, itself, and spending a large quantity of money that, for pretty much most people have never done before.
Yes.
And there comes with that like a finality to, was this the right decision? And I just did this, put in this massive investment into something. And it's scary, I think, too. Like, am I going to be able to afford it? It's a totally new way of having to operate that somebody's never done before. And that there's some maybe uncertainty in that. And also in some ways a bit of a powerlessness. I've invested into this and now maybe I feel like there's a stuckness or I'm trapped in some sense. And usually I think that fades as people adjust, right? Change is hard. And it's like there's a change process in that. I invested a ton of money. I now have to think about the upkeep of a house and maybe renovations or whatever the case is. And that can feel overwhelming. So
how do you uncover, so you got to understand, it could be that they put an offer in on Sunday and then Monday they get cold feet. They talk to other people, we find the remorse happens on the weekends. I find they're in more contact with people and the whole bit.
And is it, and do they back out?
They back out of the deal on the Monday. They don't bring the deposit in or whatever.
I was always thinking of the remorse on the other side of the purchase, but
I'm talking on the buy side. Yeah, the buyer remorse side. So the thing there is, we don't have a lot of time.
No.
So we're talking, we got hours. Deposits got to get in. What's look, I'm asking this crazy thing, but what would be a question to uncover? Like, what are they looking at the fact, is it the renovations? Is it the move? Like, how do I uncover? What's a question, an open-ended question that will kind of get to the crux of it? Because I don't have a ton of time.
No.
I know, and I know that's out of your professional thing. But tell me,
hard.
Is there a question like you can think of something to tease it out?
It's first of all, we are in a pressure cooker.
Yes.
Right? And so if we can do anything to just take the pressure off. And that's not actually, right? I can't change time.
Yep.
But I can change emotional space,
Yep.
right? It's like, let's take a breath, take a step back, and kind of sit in, like a bit of I always think if we can take pressure off by, we call it kind of extending in a way, but what you're doing is you're entering the paradox in some sense, but you're saying, you don't have to buy, and we do or we don't.
Yep.
We have options. There's no gun to our head here. Pressure off.
Gotcha.
Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Right. And settle in. I know it's a lot of pressure. It's a big decision. And so their just first step, right, is we're taking pressure off of the person who's trying to make this decision, who's in a pressure state and feels like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is the right decision. Take pressure off. Right. And do that by reminding them that they don't have to, we'll make a decision one way or the other, but let's take a step back. Let's take a breath. And then from there, it is, can we get to what is the practical or emotional kind of concern that's going on? Is it something super practical that they have, in doing the close, that, the assessment, they've identified a problem and it's just feeling like it's stretching them too thin? Or is it like a more general uncertainty and it is like a big change and that's kind of overwhelming them? And then it's like when we do that assessment of what is trying to get to what is the underlying problem, is it something that's practical that we can literally think through a budget and what would be needed and how that might, or a timeline and how we might work through that? If it's something emotional, it's like, let's identify what that is. Do I struggle with change and uncertainty, right? And then it's kind of validating that part of, everybody kind of struggles with these enormous changes.
Of course.
And when they get through it, usually it settles and they find their systems and they find their flow. But trying to help from a realtor's perspective, take pressure off, let's take a step back, let's take a breath. And then from there, it is, can we get to what is the underlying problem? Is it something that's practical that we can literally think through a budget and how that might, or a timeline and how we might work through that? If it's something emotional, it's like, let's identify what that is. Do I struggle with change and uncertainty, right? And then it's kind of validating that part of, everybody kind of struggles with these enormous changes.
Excellent.
Do an assessment of the needs.
Yes.
Is this a practical issue? Is it an emotional issue? And try to help the person feel like a place of ease to explore that. Right, like you can meet them, like have a sit down, really like that. Relax the pace, as opposed to like quick phone meetings or whatever's going on. You know, like really, like it's a big decision, and always take that pressure off. By like we don't have to, even though I know there's a lot on the line.
Would a face to face really accelerate things? Like getting to say, let me get in the car. Where are you? Can I come and see you? Would you suggest that?
I think that.
Or is that too much?
No, I think that human connection is. Like
yes,
there is literal, right? We exchange.
We paid Katherine to say that.
We exchange, biochemical signals with one another. Like there's a real experience to being in person. I know we've gone to a very virtual and online world, but there is absolutely value to just being with a person. And if you can bring a presence of chill and like,
and not panic,
so like as much as I'm coming over, it's not coming over in a panic. It's coming over like, no problem. Let's take a minute and sit down. You want to grab a coffee and talk this through a little bit.
And on the phone, can you articulate that chill? Like sometimes your voice gets elevated or what have you. Like now, if you're in front of them, you've got some body language to count on, your reaction. You've got time, getting there, you calm down, you know what I mean? As the realtor panics, right? Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah. I think
right.
of course you can do it both ways, and this is going to be an independent variable to, each realtor's capacity to hold space for their clients. And you can do it on the phone, right? You can slow it down. You can make sure they're in a kind of calm, like you can be like, let's take a half an hour. Like again, set the tone. We're not having a 5-minute phone call.
Yeah.
Like let's space it out. But I do think that the in-person or even like popping on a Zoom or whatever, then they get facial cues, they get your body posture. And then as the realtor, like you want to be embodying chill, good, like no pressure.
Yeah.
Let's work through this. Let's take the time that we need. 12 hours can seem like not a lot of time, but we can get a lot of thinking done, in that amount of time.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Like again, you'll buy it or you won't. It'll go one way. And as I know there's pressure on obviously the back end, and it's if for a realtor, if you can let go of that tension, of that urgency, of that pressure internally and kind of submit to the powerlessness, right? Like they're going to buy or they're not going to buy, but you embody that relaxation, people feel that.
I was just going to ask you, what's this? And you flowed right into it. Exactly what I was going to say. You took it right out of my head. That's awesome. Yeah, the advice to the realtor. So let's talk about something a little different. Death. Okay, so everybody handles grief in a different way. Mom's home, dad's home. They grew up there. All kinds of things. Is there cues like? And again, we see people selling things right away, or we see people like the house is vacant for a year before they made the decision. Or mom is or dad is at a home and they waited sometimes that home's been vacant for a year because mom's in a retirement home, maybe mom or long-term care. Mom, they always had the thing where, I'm going to go back when I get better, right? So there's a whole slew of emotions there. And can we encapsulate, what are some of the signs? What should we be looking for, especially when it's the home is sat vacant for a long time? Or how should we react if it's something very, very quick?
Yeah. So I guess that in these spaces, does it feel like there's a responsibility in terms of the realtors to kind of be supporting people to make that decision and at what point that decision makes sense? And are you kind of seeing it as there's points at which it feels like it's illogical in some ways, maybe that?
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I like your questioning. It's not my. Look, people make decisions. They make decisions. I just think that they've made this decision. And I just want to know, how do I handle it? The decision took a long time,
right?
And how do I handle it when the decision was pretty rapid? Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, right?
I see. Yeah, and it's when in those moments, I guess.
And because the whole transaction will be dictated by. I feel you set this a pattern and a trend and this momentum of. The longer it goes, they're kind of we'll wait and we'll get the extra money. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Or when it's rapid, they want it over with.
Yes.
So how do I deal with that, and how do I prepare myself for those?
Yeah. So it's this is helpful because you're getting people with. It sounds like this almost urgency. Like almost like I've got a hot potato and I just like got to get rid of the thing. Because there's like pain maybe in it.
Yes.
And then there's others who they're playing like, I don't know, a market game, or they're maybe delaying the pain that they might feel. So I do think it's people are going to deal with grief in such different ways. And also people come into loss and grief in such different circumstances, right? Some people are losing a parent or a loved one that there was a lot of lead up to that loss, right? They maybe were in a home and or in the hospital, et cetera, care. And so they might come into the grief a little bit more prepared than somebody who's happened to suddenly. And then other people, depends on the level of grief, right? They might not be as connected to the person and they still have to deal with this thing. And it might feel like a burden to them, right? To have to go through the process of dealing with the estate and everything post-mortem. And so I think, with grief, all we can do is hold space for people's feelings. There's no like right or wrong way for a person to work through their grief. Grief is an interesting emotion because it does happen to us in waves, and people can be very good at sort of denying their experience of grief and pushing through, but usually it catches up with us eventually at some point. We can only kind of suppress our emotions for so long. And so you're going to come into contact with people who are in that place of avoidance of their feeling and just sort of shut down and muted to it and want to move through and get over this thing. And then others who are in it in the deepest way. And working on something like selling a house while you are in really painful heartache, deep grief can be overwhelming. And like it can really create sometimes for somebody like a collapse. Like it's just too much to deal with. They don't have the capacity to deal with that. And I think respecting like where people are at as much as possible is the best that we can do, really.
Would you say that, would you say, again, this is very general advice, but would you mirror the pace? Like if we're in this rapid mode, we're going to be there with things, we're getting this house for, it'll be done by Friday. We'll make sure it gets done. So you mirror the pace, or if it's that more longer thing, you mirror that more of a slower pace. Is that? Yeah, I know.
It's so hard. It's a really great question because it might be honestly worth talking to the individual about it, because you can even say, you can highlight, you get to, the cool thing about being a realtor is you get to see the different states that people are in. So it's like you get to see something like you've categorized, right? The deaths, that you get to see the range of human responses in that. And you can bring that knowledge to a person when they're responding in the way that they are. And if they're responding from a place of this rapid, right? Like you can just feel this urgency from them. It's okay to be like, I work with people who go through this all the time. Some people like to slow it down and take their time, think through things. I just want to check in with you about what you need, right, in this place. Like, what is the pace that you want? Because I'm happy to match you, but I'm also happy to be a bit of a check, a balance point if you need me to be. And I just want to know what, where you're at with it. Because
gentle nudge, exactly. You're looking for that kind of thing. And
because if they are in a place where it's, almost like a denial of the experience, and maybe they're pushing themselves in ways that feel too fast, but you give them the opportunity to slow down if that feels like it might be right for them, that might be the best that we can do, and extend the insight, right? Giving them insight to there's different pathways
drawing your experience,
that we can take.
I love how you encapsulated that. I think that you'll get to the crux of how they want to be treated. And I think sometimes we're just doing it and we're just kind of mechanical about it. But I think to stop, ask. I think it's a great thing. Yeah. So let's switch now. There's another one. It's rearing its ugly head now, and I'll just give you a history, and I'm sure you've known and followed the market a bit. There's been 15 years of extreme growth especially in Ontario, in Southern Ontario, and Toronto, of course. No, I don't think anybody thought they were stepping into a real estate casino. It was always going to make money. It was like Bitcoin. It was always going to make money. AI stocks are always going to make money. God bless us. So they went into this thing, refinancing, acquiring, whatever they did, or stretching themselves, so to speak. There was competition in 21 and 22. People really kind of overdid it. And now they're finding themselves in a position that they probably are underwater. And they've been struggling because some of them got variable mortgages, couldn't qualify for fixed. So they, in 2022, as things started to increase over time, their payments became higher. So there's a lot of frustration. But the other piece of the puzzle is like, are you kidding me? The promise of real estate always going up. And now it's a harsh reality of they'd be lucky to break even maybe, or there is going to be a loss. It's a new reality. And how do you approach that whole thing? Because, and I find too, and I hate to do this and I'll get killed for this, but I find Canadians wait way too effing long before they do something.
They wait?
They wait. They wait. And maybe it'll heal, and maybe the interest rates, and maybe the market will turn around. But I think we're going to be in a period of a little bit of slower growth, but slower than we've been used to in the past. And that time will not heal all. So how do you break that bad news? And how do you deal with that? And that's grief in itself too, because, oh my God, I counted on this for my retirement or whatever it might be. So there's a huge range of emotions here, and self-doubt. Did I make the wrong mistake? Did I really ruin this thing for my family? Like all that kind of stuff comes into play. I think that's coming. It's rearing its ugly head in the next, this year and next year as well.
Yeah, it's hard. It's obviously so hard and has significant real impacts for people. And it's, these are hard things that you have to encounter because if they have a commonality, it's interacting with the true powerlessness of the world in a way, right? We don't have complete certainty of how things will go. We never have, but I think that we get into loops of feeling like we should have certainty when
totally right.
We absolutely cannot. And that might be some of the waiting that you're seeing, right? Is, we've created such an environment, a society where there is a sense that we can control things and that we should have absolute certainty, and that's just not the case, and it never will be. And I mean, at least I think it never will be. We'll see. But it's I guess for people to recognize that there are things that are outside of our hands, and that's not a fault of theirs. It's not a mistake of theirs. It's not a bad decision of theirs. They made the decision that they made with the best information that they had at the time, and being forgiving of themselves in that. Like, there's no personal blame to be had. We can't control the markets. We can't control the life stages that people are at and the timing of things. And so I think if you can help people to get out of a place of self-blame, recognizing the powerlessness. I kind of do this with my hands. There's a bit of a surrendering to powerlessness. I can't control everything. And then making the next best move from that place, right? What do I do if there's losses in terms of the investment when I'm selling a house? I also, can I laterally move that investment in some way that, all we can do is continue to play out in other ways, right? And think about how do I position myself to set myself up for the best success that I can, again, with the information that we have now, instead of trying to battle reality. Because I think when people are battling reality, right, it's like what the hell, right? Invest. It's always supposed to be the promised land, the promised investment, and here I'm getting burned. And helping people to get out of that battle with reality, because it's and this is a very Zen kind of Buddhist perspective, but it's suffering occurs when we start to battle our reality. There's always pain in life. There's always going to be pain. Pain we can manage, but suffering is when we battle that pain, right? When we try to wrestle with the thing and make it some other way. It's almost self-inflicted in a sense. It is, yes. And we get into those, and people can really loop and loop and loop in that place. And so I think, trying to help people come into reminding them that, you made the decision with the best information that you had, and we have to, figure out what the next best step is from this place.
Yeah, I relieving that pressure. I think I think that whole, because some things are out of our control. Some things are, but some things aren't. And I think that kind of thing and kind of figuring out how to move on. A lot of times we're looking at, well, if you don't do this, power sale, you're never going to buy a house again. I think sometimes people take it from that, what if you wait too long, and if you don't make plans and circumstances, and I can help you to some degree to a pathway to solving this, and stuff like that. So interesting point.
It's like, as much as you're able to allow people remove the pressure and then empower them, to make whatever best lateral move that they can, the best financial move that they can to try to build the future that they want for themselves.
Yeah. So I was in New York. I got to a very small audience of people. Sahil Bloom and the 5 Steps of Wealth. I got a chance to hear him, and it was, it's funny, guys. Often you hear these people that sometimes I tune out motivational speakers and things like that, but it came from this part of where he looked at. The only way we feel we have wealth is if we can measure it. And the only way we can measure it is right now wealth, right? Because he talks about the 5 types of wealth is through money and dollars, right? And if we can't measure it, we don't see any value in it, right? And he talks about the 5 different types of wealth, and his breakthrough aha moment. This is more for, I would say, anybody in sales, the realtors listening, brokers, all that, okay? Entrepreneurs in general. His aha moment was he was met with a friend in New York. He's an investment banker, high pressure work, whatever, big money. Met with a friend, and he said, "Hey, how often do you get back home? How about, because I remember your mom made the best apple pie or whatever it was. How your folks doing? How often do you see them?" And he said, "Oh, I see them. Oh, I get there once a year." And the guy and his buddy looked at him and said, "How old are your folks?" And I don't know, they're 65 or whatever. Lifespan maybe is 80.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, wait a minute here." He said, "You're only going to see them 15 more times?"
Yeah.
Like, to me, that was holy look. And I live close to my parents, and my dad just passed away, but my mom, we live very close to each other. Like, to me, that was like the heartbreaker of the century. It really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times us as realtors and brokers, it's about how many people we have and how many units and how many this and that and the other. And I think we start to have to look at this measurement in a different way. Don't you think? And wouldn't that solve a lot? And how do you feel about that? And measuring your own success? And maybe we got to take a breath.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And I can see the impact.
Oh my God, I'm almost I'm gonna get tearful.
Yeah.
It was very impactful.
It's like you're connected to the fragility of life.
Oh yeah, totally. And every day we are, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just very curious to know, advice for realtors. Last year was a sketchy year. This year was if you can't make a go of it, maybe you find something else. What is some advice? And is it always about a measurement of the money you made and the units you sold, or is it these relationships? Because some of the stuff we're talking about will not turn into, when you're talking people underwater like that, you might be able to give them advice. They go talk to their bank, they work out a system, and it really, at the end of the day, they might not use your services, but it's important to develop that relationship and that deep problem solving, even if you're not going to make money. So what advice do you have in and around that?
I mean, it's such a beautiful thing what you're connected to, the fragility of life and what is actually important. And I think it's so easy to get swallowed by the rat race and to put our worth, kind of have our worth be contingent on performance and output. And you can have 2 people, right? One person who lives a super moderate life and they have a nice family and balance and rich social relationships, but maybe aren't meeting that measure of success that we might think of a high performer. And you can have high performers who are living militant, perfect lives, who are chasing the goals that they've set for themselves and are super ambitious and working all the time and making a ton of money. And that person can be so miserable and unhappy, and this person can be blissful. And I think trying to help people to align with their true values, and also, I think thinking about what is it that drives us in our lives? What do we want our life to be connected to? What do we want our meaning to be? And people have different levels and thirsts for this. Some people don't have a high need for meaning. They're kind of good just putting in days and having structure, and other people really need it. They need a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, a sense of their why and what they're doing with their lives. And I think if you can create a life where that is at the center and you are really clear about what that is, it's not so much about the money and the worth tied to the accolades and the success, but actually creating something that feels aligned with who you are. And sometimes that there's like phases in our lives where people, maybe early on are in that initial developing who they are and their significance and developing their family and their career. And then I think there's like a middle stage that's really important for people. And these are very dynamic. They don't kind of have to go 1, 2, 3, but where you are starting to build for things that are contribution and growth oriented, that are things that are bigger than yourself, that maybe expand you and your capacity and your skill set. And then hopefully maybe there's a later stage where you get to savor some of all of that and everything that you've built and maybe have more security and stability. But some people really miss that middle phase, right, where they are just sort of doing the thing that they always did, and they were good at getting check marks and they continued down that road, but it tends to start to lack meaning and purpose. And then when you're faced with something like that you've brought up, right, and this connected to the fragility of life and the short nature of time and the preciousness of the life that we have, it can be like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Measurement goes two ways, right?
It goes.
The measurement was 15 more times.
15.
Yeah, exactly. Is it that we're too linear? Are we a linear species and not thinking the full, like, I don't care the shape, a circle, a square. Is it just that we're so linear now in our thinking? Is that part of the problem?
I feel like in some ways, I mean, there's probably a million ways you could look at this kind of question, but I think in some ways we've really moved into a structure from a capitalistic framework that has been so goal-oriented and production-oriented and revenue and GDP-oriented, and we've eliminated a lot of thinking about structuring our lives from our true needs as humans. Like, what actually is human flourishing? What allows one person to have such deep well-being and another person to struggle? And how do we create a life and a society, ideally, someday, that actually would align with the optimal experiences in life, right? That are filled with connection, family, like loved ones, that has space for time, freedom, like ease, rest, but also growth and meaning and purpose and all of those things that are such human qualities. And unfortunately, I feel like to your point, we do pigeonhole ourselves a little bit, and we do get on a singular track where we push a lot of those things to the side. They get kind of relegated to the corners of our lives. And the main thing is just us being these machines of output and production and, wealth and success. And we lose all of the really important nuances in our lives. So I'm sure when people are going through some of these difficult, down periods, maybe it's like there is a bit of an opportunity for a reassessment of my life and how I'm living my life and what is important to me. And sometimes maybe that means downgrading parts of my life to allow myself to have space maybe to grow in other ways, to expand myself in other ways, but to feed my soul ultimately and set myself up for continued prosperity and growth into the future. But I think that like what you're bringing is that reassessment of what is important to me. And it's nice when we can actually take a breath and step back and do some of that work, because I think for a lot of people, I see this all the time where you were, a great student, great athlete, and then because of that, you went into kinesiology, and then because you were in kinesiology, you went to a physiotherapist, and now you have a group physiotherapy practice, and you're doing really well, and you're crushing it at life, but you're like, I don't really like this job, and it's just because I just did the next check mark. Like this thing led to this thing, led to this thing. There wasn't a sitting back, a conscientious, conscious thought process about who am I, what feeds me, what is unique to me that will help me propel myself forward in life, that will allow me to have a goalpost that I never reach that constantly moves forward, and what speaks to me. And we haven't created a society that like really cultivates that. I spent a year in Denmark, and there I think it's post high school, or maybe it's post your first few years of university, they basically take 5 years off, and the students like go travel, go get jobs, go this, and then come back to school and figure out what you want to do. A pause, like a time to figure out who are you, because we don't know who we are when we're 18, and we're making these choices that then just put it down a path, and we go down that path, and we might get to a place in our lives where we're like, I don't know if this is actually where I want to be, and I am connected to the preciousness of life, and I do want to set myself up to be able to put my needs and also my values and what my priorities are in a place that isn't just in the corners, and I want to have that be a priority in my life. So it's a complicated thing, trying to create space for that.
But I think your message resonates, and I think people are listening. And I feel we're getting into this more of a needs-based economy, like I need to do something.
I hope.
And it is, because it's going back to what you said. We've done some numbers and analysis, and it's transcending. Let's say if the Bank of Canada pauses rates, we see a jump in it. People are saying, I'm going to go in now. Maybe this is the time. I think there's so many people sitting on the sidelines that need to do something. I think finally people are realizing that, there is a need and a homestead. And because I know home ownership, but I think the whole continuum, I think a stabilized residence is so critical for people's mental health and success and things like that, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think people in our industry I like what you said, maybe they got to take a pause because maybe this isn't the right career for you too.
I mean, that is a hard thing that people confront. We think about psychological issues kind of in three buckets. There's a lot of nuances there, but people struggle in their relationship with themselves, like anxiety, depressions, their sense of self-worth, anger issues, grief, etc. They struggle in relational issues, our partnerships, marriage, friends, family, parents, kids, co-workers, etc. And then that third kind of bucket is existential issues and things like my career, what do I want for my life, what is meaning, what is purpose. That can also apply to family planning and decisions and big role transitions like retiring and what do I want with my life. But it is, I think, when people are in this place, and I see it a lot, where there's like an emptiness in their lives, in their career, that I so deeply wish for everyone that they could do the bold thing and redesign their life. Because do you really want to live a life where you're kind of miserable and sort of half satisfied and not really reaching your potential? Or do you want to do the hard thing of growing and changing and doing something more radical? Hard to do though, right? There's real life constraints. There's families, businesses, mortgges, all the things that come with that. So it's not easy for people for sure.
Well, if Sahil, he left his job, moved close to his parents. It was a whole. It's transformational, right?
Yes.
And not everybody has that opportunity to do that. But I think it's something that we should all be doing going forward.
I celebrate it. Blow up your life, start over, let's go.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm curious for you, Conrad. What would you say your drives in life have been? And maybe how that's changed or evolved for you. If you could even distill it down to one or two words, what's the driver for you? I'm always curious, especially going into family business, right?
Yeah, I wanted to build a business that transcended the market, transcended mindset, everything. Just build a business that would empower people to empower their consumers to make better and quicker decisions. That's really what it's all been about, right? Look, I go through it too, and I was going to talk social media. Today I'm on social media, there's a lot of doom and gloom. A lot of brokerages are closing and they're using trust monies and whatever. And it kind of weighs on you to think does this have to? Is this the plight of the industry in my mind? But no, you can transcend it with proper, growth, planning, investing, all that kind of thing. So to me,
it's growth orientation.
Yeah, very much a growth orientation, but growth, but good growth, and empowering, educating, data. I love data, and just we can end it real quickly, and just want to know there's the dark side of AI and AI and AI as a people go to AI to solve all their problems and things like that, asking them and the dialogues. Where do you see that in terms of going forward when it comes to mental health? Do you think we'll see a spike in the need for more people like you and programs like yourself because of this again, and the falsehoods that AI and all that? What's your biggest fear going forward when you see this AI revolution coming?
I mean, biggest fear is we're all out of jobs. And I'm I guess we'll figure it out after that. We'll all have a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
And I have an AI company. We're just about to launch our product, and it is a mental health app. And trying to create like emotional processing. Will AI be able to take over all of the mental health space? Very well could.
Okay.
I think, intellectual jobs are at risk, certainly. Will there still be a need for human connection? And I think, the work that I do is very emotionally based, working with people's deep emotions, accessing their emotions, working through those emotions. I don't know if AI will be able to have the attunement, at least for some time, to be able to do that work. But I do see a lot of shifts in the whole market, and it's like a point at which when people are not able to do the jobs that they have, they also won't be able to pay for services that they need. So it's quite world. And, who knows? Maybe it will still be a tool and not actually taking over our lives. But on the mental health space, too, there's a lot of risks in using AI currently when it comes to mental health. If you're using it in a supportive, motivational context, I think it's a great tool. And, most of my clients use AI in supportive ways for themselves. Where it gets into trouble is when you are searching for validation of your feelings. It can then amplify that in ways that are not grounded in reality and lead people into biased ways of thinking about themselves or others, or in the worst kind of cases where there's actually like delusional kind of experiences that people are kind of being guided into. And then in some cases, of course, there's like risk for suicide or other things because you're not actually getting real help from real humans. But I think for the average person, it's like caution around utilizing AI for emotional support and to be the guide of validating what I'm feeling, because it doesn't have the context. And the problem is we're giving it the context, and we have a perspective that we have, and reality is not one perspective, it is multiple perspectives. And so when you're not able to give the perspective of other people or what is happening, you're going to see it in a biased way, and AI will reflect what you see. So I think it's important to go into those things with a little bit of caution, and also utilize it in the ways that are helpful.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of studies about how search and how people are buying real estate using AI, and it's a remarkable number of people are really consulting with AI. Yeah, is this the right time to buy? Is this the time to buy in Hamilton? Well, like, is this the wrong time to buy in Hamilton? And then it just kind of goes down this kind of crazy path or whatever it might be. So yeah, you got to be cautious of that. And I always believe if you're great at your job, just be great at what you do. And just be great at what you do. And there's always that last mile that AI just can't do. And you'll always be, I think you'll always be in business and you'll always be successful. Katherine, I can't thank you enough for today. It was, again, inspiring, opened up my mind. That whole piece about slowing this down, relieving the pressure. It's something that we're dealing with every day. And sometimes, and I think you could have unlocked something in people that think, this is a frustrating job and I don't know if I can do this for the next 10 to 15 years. I think you help people shift the way they're looking at things. Instead of looking at it as this constant battle, there's this, let's morph our way into their psyche and what they're thinking and help them along and relieve the pressure. And that's what we're all about, because we're in their lives for 6 to 8 weeks. Let's relieve the pressure.
That's right.
And empathy. And remember, people are going through other things behind the scenes.
That's right. Empathy, validation, relieving the pressure, seeing the feeling, what is going on, helping to assess and give some space. It's an important work. You're in in the thick of things.
You never would have thought of that, right?
No, I know.
So maybe we'll do an AI app to get you through the psychology of buying and selling.
Yes, I love it.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Katherine. Honestly, you're a wealth of knowledge. You've got a huge EQ, and I have to say we're blessed to have you today, honestly. And thank you for all your insight and opening up our minds and opening up some doors and some opportunity for people along the way. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Conrad.